Hey guys, tonight we slip back into the Middle Ages. Into a world where your alarm clock isn't a buzzing phone but a rooster with way too much confidence. You stir awake beneath a thatched roof, straw scratching against your cheek, and the faint aroma of smoke and yesterday's onion stew still heavy in the air. Not exactly lavender-scented candles, but hey, at least it keeps bugs away well, some of them. You blink through dim light, sneaking in through cracks in the wall, realizing that your blanket is basically just a rough wool sheet. If you're lucky, it's not damp. Spoiler, it probably is. You roll over and notice that half the family is still snoring beside you. Because yes, you all share the same space. Privacy. Medieval edition meant turning your face to the wall and pretending you didn't hear your uncles snoring like a broken bagpipe. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, post in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I love seeing our little time-traveling village spread across the globe. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You push aside the ragged wool cover and sit up. The rushes scattered on the dirt floor crackle under your bare feet, releasing a faint grassy smell, but mixed with that unmistakable tang of waste that's been swept in and out too many times. Don't think about it too hard, it's compost chic. Your stomach grumbles already, but breakfast isn't a thing here. Not unless you count a crust of yesterday's bread dipped in thin ale. And yes, even kids drink ale, because water is a roll-the-dice gamble with dysentery. You probably won't survive this, but let's keep moving. The hut itself is one room. No kitchen, no bathroom, no walk-in closet full of tunics in every shade of brown, just smoky rafters above and smoky air below. That smoke, by the way, isn't an accident. Here's no chimney, so the fire in the center sends its haze drifting until it squeezes out through the thatch. It stings your eyes, but it also chases pests away and preserves the meat hanging from beams. Historians still argue whether peasants got used to the constant smoke, or if everyone just had watery eyes forever. Either way, your lungs aren't writing 5-star reviews. Beside you, your younger brother stirs, rubbing his eyes with fists blackened from yesterday's chores. He's maybe 7, but already expected to scare crows from the field with a rattle. Childhood, medieval kids had it, but shorter and louder. A tiny cry from the far side of the hut reminds you that babies are here too. Swaddled tight and sometimes hung in a cradle that swings from the rafters like a medieval mobile. Cute, until you realize the lullaby is more often sung over the constant hum of hunger. You reach for your tunic, coarse wool, scratchy enough to exfoliate your skin, whether you like it or not. It smells faintly of sheep, because it was a sheep. Shoes, if you have them, are leather, stiff, and cracked. Many go barefoot, and your toes already know the feel of cold earth, frozen in winter, sticky in summer. Dressing takes no time because fashion choices are wool, brown, or wool, slightly less brown. Outside, the rooster crows again. That bird is basically your smartphone alarm, except you can't put it on snooze. You step out, and the air is fresher, cool, with mist hugging the fields. Smoke rises from neighboring huts, a thin gray veil over the village. Dogs bark, pigs grunt, chickens scatter. The smell of manure is everywhere because it's also fertilizer. That's the perfume of survival. Your mother already crouches over the embers, coaxing them back to life. Sparks dance, and soon she's boiling a pot of pottage stew of grains. Water, maybe a vegetable if yesterday's barter was good. Meat, rare. If you see a chunk floating there, it's probably bacon rind saved for weeks. She ladles a thin portion into a wooden bowl, hands it to you. The spoon is carved from wood too, rough at the edges. You sip the lukewarm gruel. It tastes bland, earthy, filling if you imagine hard enough. You chew on a crust of bread, dense and dark, made from rye or barley. because wheat is for the rich or the lucky. Here's a quirky tidbit. Sometimes bread was padded with ground beans, acorns, even tree bark during bad harvests. Bon appétit. As you eat, you listen. Voices outside mingle the low murmur of men gathering tools, the gossip of women at the well, the cluck of hens. Life is cramped, yet everything feels woven together, like strands in a net. Your day isn't just about you, it's about the rhythm of the whole village. From the corner of your eye, you notice the family pig nosing near the door. Yes, livestock lives with you, at least during colder months. Chickens sometimes too. It's warmth, it's protection, it's messy. Imagine rolling over at night and realizing your pillow clucked. You scrape the last of the pottage and rinse your mouth with a gulp of weak ale. It's sour but safer than water. A tiny buzz at 7 in the morning. Standard medieval breakfast vibes. Your father hands you a wooden tool, something between a hoe and a stick, and nods toward the fields. But before you can go, you hear the toll of the church bell. That sound cuts through fog, smoke, chatter, everything. It's the heartbeat of the village. Time isn't tracked by clocks, but by bells. Matins, lauds, prime, terce. Each one a reminder that God's shadow stretches across your day, even as mud clings to your boots. You pause, looking toward the stone church, small but towering over timber huts. Its spire scratches the sky. Its bell insists you bow your head, even if only for a moment. You mutter a prayer, partly faith, partly habit. Everyone does. The church owns land, holds power, dictates the rhythm of fasting and feasting. Even your breakfast, thin as it is, carries its blessing. Historians still argue whether peasants' faith was deep conviction or just survival instinct. But in this moment, kneeling briefly on the damp earth, you feel both. Your little sister tugs your sleeve, whispering about the saint's feast coming soon, the chance of a little bread with honey. Her eyes shine with hope that doesn't understand taxes or tides yet. You smile faintly, ruffle her hair, and stand. The sun edges higher, warming the mist. You step toward the path, your family behind you, the church bell still echoing in your chest. The day has begun between the smoky hut you left and the wide fields that await. And as you trudge forward, you realize, this tiny hut, smoky and cramped, isn't just shelter. It's the core of your existence, where hunger, warmth, laughter, and survival tangle into one stubborn flame that refuses to die out. The soul of the medieval village begins here, between the hearth and the field, between the bell and the mud, between faith and fatigue. The bell doesn't stop when you want it. Twit rolls on, deep and resonant, like the village's heartbeat. You step out of your smoky hut, rubbing your eyes against the morning mist, and the sound pulls you forward almost like a leash. The church is just a short walk from your door, but in the narrow lanes between huts. Every step feels like stepping into a stage where the whole village watches and whispers. You catch your neighbor crouched by the well, muttering a prayer as she fills her bucket, and a cluster of children running past, chasing a stick like it's the most expensive toy in the world. The path toward the church is muddy, your shoes or bare feet ready soaked. It doesn't matter. You're not here to look glamorous. You're here because the bell insists you belong. Faith in the medieval world isn't a private affair, it's public. The church is the tallest building around, its stone walls cold but impressive against the timber of every hut. That contrast alone screams who's in charge here. And you, like everyone else, file through the door when it creaks open. Inside, it's dim, smoky with incense, flickering with candlelight. You kneel automatically because that's what you do. Wooden benches are rare. Most people stand or kneel on rush-strewn floors. Your knees ache, but you stay there because standing out isn't safe. The priest chants, Latin flowing through the air like a song you've heard all your life but never really understood. You don't need to. The gestures, the rhythm, the bell ringing against this is your compass. The church isn't just a holy place. It's your village notice board. Today, you hear not just prayers, but announcements. Who owes grain? Whose marriage banns are red? Which feast day is approaching? The voice of God and the voice of gossip mingle here. That old man at the back. He's definitely paying more attention to who skipped service than to the sermon. Historians still argue whether peasants believed every word of doctrine, or if religion was more about community glue than inner conviction. What you know is this: missing Mass would earn you more side eyes than skipping jury duty today. And if you skip too often, you might find yourself in front of the man with the tonsure haircut and more power than you'd like. When the service ends, you shuffle out into the daylight again, blinking. The air feels cleaner, fresher after the heavy incense, though you still smell faintly of smoke and sheep. Outside the church door, the real show begins. Chatter. Villagers cluster in knots, whispering about harvests, about who borrowed whose ox, about the strange peddler seen last week. You stand there, pretending to listen to Father Thomas reminding everyone to tithe honestly. Translation: give more grain. But your ears drift toward the two women gossiping about a neighbor's daughter who might be sneaking. Glances at the miller's apprentice. Juicy. The churchyard is more than graves and grass. It's where life happens. Children chase each other between leaning stones. Chickens peck near the wall, and someone's goat bleats indignantly as it's dragged home. Death and life side by side, and nobody blinks. You nod to your friend, exchange a joke about the priest's droning voice, and laugh just loud enough to let others know you're still part of the rhythm. You glance back at the church itself. Solid stone, stained glass that barely lets in light. A steeple that can be seen from the fields. It's not just architecture, it's power made visible. That building reminds you every day that salvation and survival both run through it. Even the land you work technically belongs to God, though the Lord collects the rent. Funny how that works. Back in the lane, the smell of fresh bread wafts from a nearby oven, making your stomach twist. A neighbor, lucky enough to bake today, pulls out loaves dark and heavy. You consider asking for a bit, but you know the price. A favor, a trade, maybe half a day's labor. Nothing is free, not even the bread blessed by the priest earlier. As you walk back toward the edge of the village, you feel the weight of the morning. The bell, the incense, the gossip there stitched into your daily fabric. This isn't a religion you visit once a week. It's in every field blessing, every oath you swear, every marriage, every burial. Even the rhythm of your meals is bent around fasting days and feast days. Without the church, time itself would lose meaning. Still, you can't shake a wry thought. The bell doesn't just call you to prayer, calls you to surveillance. Everyone sees you arrive. Everyone sees you leave. Skip too often, and tongues wag. Sometimes you wonder if God hears you more than your neighbors do, but you shrug. In a world where famine lurks and plagues can sweep in without warning, better safe than sorry. You reach your hut again, the smoke curling lazily from its roof. Your mother is sweeping out the rushes, shaking her head at the mud tracked in by your siblings. Your father is already gathering tools for the field. Life doesn't pause just because you've muttered a prayer. The bell fades in the distance, but its echo lingers. You know you'll hear it again soon, breaking the day into chunks like invisible clock hands. A quirky tidbit for you. Some medieval bells were believed to drive away storms and evil spirits. Villagers would ring them during thunder, convinced that the booming sound could scare off demons hiding in the clouds. Whether or not it worked, you're not about to test it. Let those bells own your day, from dawn to dusk, and maybe even your dreams. As you take up your hoe, ready to trudge toward the fields, you cast one last glance at the church spire. Its shadow stretches across the village lanes, across your hut, across the very ground you walk. Faith, fear, and habit blend into one long chord that hums beneath your every step. And just like that, the day begins, not with your will alone, but with the tolling of a bell that reminds you who you are, where you belong, and what you must carry. Between church and field, between whispers and prayers. Your life moves forward on rhythms older than you and louder than any rooster. The field path squishes under your boots, every step releasing a soft squelch of mud mixed with manure. Welcome to your morning commute, medieval style. No horse-drawn carriage for you, no cobblestones or umbrellas, just the smell of earth, dung and sweat carried on the breeze. The sun is climbing now, pale and filtered through a thin sheet of clouds. It promises nothing. It might warm you, it might scorch the crops, or it might disappear behind a sudden rainstorm. The land decides, not you. Ahead stretches the open strips of field, long and narrow, parceled out in neat lines that snake across the landscape. They look almost like ribbons laid across a patchwork quilt, but you know better than to call it pretty. Each strip belongs to a villager, though not always the same one year to year. That's part of the system. The Lord ensures everyone gets a mix of good soil and bad soil, so nobody gets too lucky. It's fair. In theory, in practice, you're still bent double with a hoe, trying to wrestle life out of stubborn dirt. You shoulder your tool and begin. Today, it's weeding and turning soil, though yesterday it was scattering seed, and tomorrow it might be hauling manure. The rhythm is endless. Plow, plant, weed, harvest, repeat. No holidays here except the ones granted by the church calendar, and even then, you're never far from the soil. Your back protests already, stiff from nights on straw, but you push on. Everyone does. If you don't, there's no bread, no pottage, nothing to chew when your belly growls in the dark. You pause for a breath, leaning on the wooden handle, and glance sideways. Your neighbor, ankle deep in mud, waves a tired hello. He's guiding a plow, its heavy iron tip biting into the soil while two oxen strain in their yokes. Their sides heave, their breath steaming. You think fleetingly how much easier this would be if you had more beasts to share the burden. But oxen are expensive, practically medieval for arson. Only a few households can afford them outright. Most villagers share, rotating who gets to borrow them for their strips. And you? Today's not your turn. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants were always on the brink of starvation, or if their diet was sturdier than we imagine. You know this much. When the harvest fails, nobody debates. They just suffer. You remember the stories told by your grandfather about the Great Famine a generation ago, when rain drowned fields for years and people ate cats, dogs, even bark. Whether exaggerated or not, the shadows of those hungry years still linger in the lines on every elder's face. You bend again, hacking at weeds, feeling the damp soil cling to your fingers. The smell is raw, pungent, strangely comforting. You might joke that you'll never need a spa mud mask after this. Your pores are already well acquainted with dirt. And while your back aches and your hands blister, there's a kind of rhythm here. The field hums with life. Birds swoop overhead, worms twist in the turned soil, and the rustle of crops in the wind is its own kind of hymn. Still, let's not romanticize this too much. The sun climbs higher and sweat trickles down your neck, salty and sticky. Flies swarm your face, persistent, buzzing right into your eyes like they paid rent there. You swat, curse under your breath, and keep moving. Your stomach grumbles, reminding you that all this labor is fueled by a breakfast of thin pottage and crust. Imagine doing CrossFit after skipping lunch for a week, and you're close to the medieval workout plan. At midday, you finally pause. You sit at the edge of the strip, pulling out a chunk of bread from your pouch. Hard as wood, it could double as a weapon if thrown. You soften it in your ale, chew slowly, and let your jaw do most of the work. That bread, by the way, often hides a surprise. Grit from millstones. Teeth wear down fast when every bite is sprinkled with medieval sand. No wonder old folks walk around with gums like toothless gates. As you eat, you look around. The village sprawls behind you, huts huddled together, smoke curling upward. Ahead, the fields roll into the distance, dotted with figures bent double, just like you. Beyond that, the forest edge looms dark and mysterious, full of both firewood and danger. Wolves, boars, outlaws, pick your nightmare. The field feels safer, even if it grinds you down day by day. A quirky tidbit. Sometimes villagers left little charms or tokens buried in the soil, hoping to ward off bad harvests. A coin, a carved figure, even a scrap of cloth. You once saw your neighbor mutter a prayer while slipping something shiny under a furrow. You didn't ask questions. Better to let superstition do its work. After all, a little magic doesn't hurt when the difference between feast and famine could hinge on a single storm. The afternoon stretches long. You drag the hoe through weeds, you scatter dung, you guide seeds into furrows with careful fingers. Time moves differently here. No hours or minutes, just the arc of the sun and the toll of the bell in the distance. When the shadow of the steeple shifts across the fields, you know it's closer to evening. By now, your shoulders burn, your knees ache, and your palms are raw. You lean back, stretching until your spine pops, and stare at the sky. A hawk circles lazily overhead, hunting. You think, not for the first time, how nice it would be to soar above all this, free of mud and weeds. Then you snort. Hawks don't pay rent to the Lord, but they don't get bread either. You're stuck, feet in the soil, because the soil is the only bargain you've got. Your father calls out, motioning for help with a stubborn clump of weeds. You trudge over, kneel, and pull. The roots resist, clinging fiercely to their patch. You yank until your hands sting, finally tearing them free. It feels symbolic, though you're too tired to give it poetic meaning. Mostly, you just want supper. Evening nears, the sun dipping low, painting the fields gold. The oxen are led home, the plows dragged behind, the tools collected. You look back at your strip kneader, tidier, though not transformed. Tomorrow, you'll be here again. The soil always asks for more, like an ungrateful guest who never leaves. But for now, you straighten, wipe your brow, and breathe deep. The day has cost you blisters and aches, but it's done. On your walk back, you think of tomorrow, of harvests and hopes, of the Lord's share, of the tithe owed to the church. Your belly growls again, but you smile faintly. Even mud, sweat, and flies can't strip you of the stubborn will to keep going. You walk home with dirt under your nails, the bell in your ears, and the knowledge that the soul of the village is written into every furrow you've carved today. The walk back from the field is heavy, not just with tired legs, but with the weight of expectation. You know exactly what waits at the hut, the smell of smoke, the creak of the wooden door, and hopefully, the thin comfort of supper. Your stomach growls like a caged dog, and even though you've chewed on bread all day, you crave something warm. The medieval diet isn't about variety, it's about endurance. Tonight, like most nights, you'll be spooning pottage into your mouth again. Pottage is the village's answer to everything. Sick, eat pottage. Hungry, eat pottage. Celebrating. Add an onion and call it a feast. It's basically a stew, thick or thin depending on how generous fortune has been. Grains form the base: barley, oats, or rye mixed with whatever vegetables you've managed to grow or scrounge. Leeks, onions, cabbage. The holy trinity of peasant cuisine. You trudge through the lane, imagining that bubbling pot on the hearth, steam curling. The smell both comforting and a little sour. When you arrive, the hut is already warm. Smoke curls from the central fire pit, and your mother is crouched beside the pot, stirring slowly. The firelight flickers across her face, sweat shining on her forehead. She glances up, eyes tired but soft, and gestures for you to sit. Wooden bowls wait on the table, or rather, a plank laid across to stumps. Not elegant, but it works. The family gathers, shuffling onto benches and stools. The baby squalls from its cradle, hung in the rafters, adding a steady soundtrack. Your mother ladles out portions. The pottage tonight is thin, more water than grain, but there are hints of turnip and maybe just maybe a scrap of bacon rind. You grin like you've won a lottery. Meat in the pot is rare, saved for festivals or emergencies, but every so often, a sliver sneaks in. You grab your wooden spoon and scoop eagerly. The flavor is earthy, salty, with just enough fat to coat your tongue. For a moment, the ache in your back eases. Beside the pottage, there's bread. Dark, dense loaves, heavy with rye. Wheat bread. Forget it, that's for lords, priests, and townsfolk. You tear off a piece, chew hard, and wash it down with weak ale. The ale is thin and sour, but safer than water. The kids sip it too, their little faces scrunching at the bitterness. One day, they'll drink it like you do, without a flinch. You think back to a quirky fact your uncle once muttered. Sometimes bakers cut corners. Patting bread with beans, acorns, or even ground-up weeds when grain was scarce. And in truly desperate times, there were rumors of ground bark added in. You eye your bread suspiciously. Hopefully tonight's loaf is just grain. Mealtimes aren't just about eating. They're about stories. Your father speaks first, voice gravelly from years of shouting across fields. He talks about the plow, how the oxen balked at a furrow, how the soil felt stubborn under the blade. Your brother chimes in with a proud story of scaring off crows, though you suspect the crows weren't impressed. Your mother listens, nodding, while her hands stay busy mending a shirt even as she eats. No moment is wasted. The talk shifts to the village. Someone's cow gave birth. Someone else's sheep wandered off into the forest. There's gossip about a man caught watering down ale at the tavern, and laughter ripples around the table. Food fills bellies, but chatter fills the silence, reminding everyone they're part of something larger than their aching bodies. Historians still argue whether peasants ate poorly every day or if, in good years, their diet was actually steady and reliable. You'd argue that it depends on who you ask and what year it is. A bumper harvest means bellies full of bread and bowls thick with vegetables. A bad harvest means chewing on watery pottage and hoping spring comes fast. Tonight, though, you eat until the pot is scraped clean, and that feels like victory. After the main meal, there's a small treat. Cheese, not the creamy wheels you might picture, but a hard, tangy lump, sharp on the tongue. Your little sister claps her hands when she gets a piece. Dairy is precious, though dangerous too. Everyone's heard of the milk sickness that strikes when it spoils. Still, you savor it. The baby calms, soothed with a rag dipped in alias. Really? The hut grows quieter. The fire pops, the pot bubbles faintly, and the air feels heavier as bellies fill. You lean back on the bench, spoon dangling from your hand, and let your eyelids droop for just a second. Then your father grunts and gestures toward the door. Do you know what that means? Chores. Supper isn't the end of the day, it's just halftime. You drag yourself up, step outside, and breathe in the cool air. The smell of other suppers drifts from neighboring huts, a medley of smoke, cabbage, and onion. Dogs bark, pigs snuffle, chickens squawk as they're herded into coops. The whole village hums with the same rhythm. Each hut a verse in the same song. You help fetch water from the well, balancing the heavy bucket, splashing your tunic. You scatter scraps for the pigs, who grunt appreciatively. The sky darkens, stars pricking through. The moon a faint silver coin. You hear laughter from the tavern, voices raised in song. But that's not for you tonight. You're too young, too tired, too broke. Still, you smile faintly. The sound of merriment means the village is alive, even if you're not part of it just yet. Back inside, the bowls are stacked, rinsed quickly with cold water. The fire is banked, glowing embers sending soft warmth into the hut. You curl up again on the straw, stomach heavier, limbs looser. Your sister murmurs a prayer. Your mother hums a lullaby. And you drift between waking and sleep, your head filled with the taste of bread and the comfort of pottage. you dream of bigger meals. Roasted fowl, sweet honey, pies stuffed with fruit. Maybe one day. For now, you're grateful for cabbage and ale. Because in a world where famine always lurks at the edge of memory, every bite feels like borrowed time. And as the hut quiets, with only the crackle of fire and the steady breathing of family around you, you realize that food isn't just about hunger. It's about hope, about togetherness, about enduring another day in a world that asks so much of you. Between bread crusts and bubbling pots, the soul of the village keeps beating, faint, stubborn, and unbroken. The next morning, after scraping the last of the bread crusts from the pot, you find yourself headed toward the heart of the village, the marketplace. It isn't a sprawling bazaar like the ones you've maybe pictured in fairy tales. No flying carpets, no pyramids of jewel-bright fruit. Here, the marketplace is a dirt square lined with makeshift stalls, planks balanced on barrels, blankets spread on the ground, baskets propped up with sticks. Still, for you, it's electric. This is the one place where gossip, barter, and the rare whiff of exotic goods come together like threads in a single knot. The air hits you first. It's a cocktail of salted fish, livestock sweat, freshly baked bread, and the unmistakable temps of cabbage. A pig squeals from a rope tether. Chickens flap in wicker cages. And somewhere, a dog barks in protest at being shooed from the cheese stall. The crowd is thick. Today men, women, children, all jostling, laughing, muttering, and sometimes shouting. For a village that usually moves at the pace of a plow, the marketplace feels alive, buzzing. You wander between stalls, clutching the few coins and bits of barter you've managed to scrape together. Maybe some eggs from your hens, maybe a little cloth your mother spun. Money here is scarce. Most exchanges happen with a shake of the hand and a trade of goods. You spot a neighbor holding up a bundle of onions, bartering for salt. They argue loudly, but with smiles. This is performance as much as transaction. At the fish stall, salted herring dominates. The smell is sharp, briny, and not for the faint of heart. You wrinkle your nose, but can't deny its importance. Herring keeps for months, carried inland from the coast, a lifeline for fasting days when meat is forbidden. Your mother nudges you to pay attention. This could be supper for weeks if you get the trade right. Historians still argue whether peasants embraced the church's fasting rules out of deep faith or simple resignation. You're not debating theology. Just know that salted fish is both punishment and salvation. Too much of it and you'll swear off the sea forever. But in a world without refrigerators, you're grateful it exists. You move on. The cloth stall catches your eye. Bolts of wool dyed in muted reds and greens, spun by local women. The colors aren't dazzling, but in a sea of brown tunics, even a faint green stripe feels like rebellion. A girl about your age hovers there, cheeks flushed, pretending to examine thread while sneaking glances at the miller's apprentice across the way. You smirk. Market day is also date day for the bold. A quirky tidbit you overhear from an older man. Sometimes market stalls doubled as gambling spots. Dice games or betting on chicken fights hidden behind baskets of turnips. Today, though, the reef the local officials circulates with sharp eyes, making sure nobody cheats, steals, or stirs too much trouble. His presence is a reminder that markets aren't just economic hubs, they're also about control. Taxes are tallied here, fines announced, rules enforced. You shuffle your coins nervously, aware that even pennies don't escape notice. The bread stall is where the energy peaks. Fresh loaves pulled from communal ovens steam in the morning chill. Dark, heavy, fragrant, they're irresistible. But the price bites. You linger, trying to calculate if you can afford one, or if tonight's supper will be more pottage. The baker, flour streaked across his brow, grins knowingly. He's seen the hunger in everyone's eyes before. Nearby, a traveling peddler displays wares on a faded cloth. Bright pins, combs of bone, even a little mirror of polished metal. Exotic luxuries compared to turnips and onions. Children crowd around, eyes wide. You reach out, touch the cool surface of the mirror, and for a moment, you're startled by your own reflection. Dirt-smudged cheeks, hair wild, eyes curious. How rare it is to really see yourself. You quickly pull back, cheeks hot as though caught in some kind of vanity sin. The gossip thickens as you pass groups huddled in corners. A story about a thief caught stealing grain last week, another about the Lord's steward demanding more taxes, and always whispers about who is courting whom. You realize the marketplace isn't just for good zits, the village's rumor mill, the medieval version of social media. One overheard word here can ripple through huts by nightfall. You pause at the ale stand. The brewer, burly and red-cheeked, pours thin beer into wooden mugs. Men cluster, laughing, slapping backs, already half-buzzed, though it's not yet noon. You sip cautiously sour, weak but refreshing after the dust of the stalls. Someone jokes about it being liquid bread, and you can't help but laugh. After all, half the village survives on this stuff. The reeve shouts suddenly, announcing that fines will be collected. The crowd shifts, nervous murmurs rising. You watch as villagers step forward, paying small sums or handing over goods. Some faces are tight with resentment. Nobody enjoys partying with their hard-earned produce, but resistance is risky. The Lord's power stretches here too, invisible but ever-present. You wander toward the edge of the market where entertainment sometimes blooms. A wandering minstrel plucks at a lute, singing tales of knights and saints. Children sit cross-legged, enraptured, while their parents pretend not to listen. You let the melody wash over you, simple yet rich, reminding you that even in mud and hunger, beauty sneaks in. By afternoon, the market thins. Stalls pack up, baskets empty, gossip carried home like kindling. You clutch the salted fish your family bartered for, heavy in your hands, and a loaf of bread smaller than you wanted. It will have to do. Hunger doesn't wait for bargains. On the walk back, you replay the day. The sharp smell of fish, the glint of combs, the laughter at the ale stall, the whispers swirling like smoke. You realize that the marketplace isn't just about trade, it's the village's stage where survival and spectacle mingle. Here, you glimpse what's beyond your hut and your strip of field. Here, the soul of the village gathers in one loud, messy, unforgettable chorus. And as you step back into the quieter lane, basket tucked under your arm, you can almost still hear it. The echo of laughter, it's the clink of coins, the buzz of voices rising like a hymn, not to God, but to the stubborn will to live. The calendar has its own rhythm in a medieval village, and today, like many others, you find yourself pulled between work and worship, between fasting and feasting, all dictated by the church's ever-watchful eye. Feast days are rare, but sacred, moments when the monotony of pottage and rye bread is interrupted, and the village pulses with a different kind of life. The bells toll again, this time longer, deeper, more insistent, signaling the beginning of a festival. You blink against the sunlight, aware that today your work in the field will be light or war at least. That's the hope. The villagers gather near the church, which is decked in its best. Simple garlands of greenery, candles flickering in holders carved from wood, perhaps a few painted banners. You step carefully across the muddy path, dodging chickens and puddles, your heart a little lighter at the prospect of food beyond pottage. Inside the church, the ritual is just as intricate as on ordinary days, but with a layer of anticipation. Latin chants rise, voices carrying the promise of indulgence later. You kneel, hum along if you know the words, and try not to fidget as Father Thomas reminds everyone of fasting rules. Today, you note the irony. Rules about not eating meat before communion, and yet outside, a pig is sizzling over coals. Its aroma almost sinful in its temptation. Historians still argue whether peasants strictly observed fasting, or if clever loopholes, like fish or pottage with hidden scraps, were part of everyday life. You smirk quietly to yourself, thinking about the salted herring you'll probably get later. Still technically allowed. After Mass, the village square transforms into a stage. Children dart about, playing games with sticks and hoops, while women arrange small stalls of baked goods, dyed cloth, and hand-carved wooden trinkets. Men cluster in small groups, comparing tools, joking about the day's labor, and speculating on who might sneak an extra portion of ale without being noticed. The marketplace energy you know so well merges with the festive spirit, creating a chaotic, intoxicating hum that vibrates under your feet. You wander past a stall with fresh pies, their crusts golden from the communal oven. One slice is passed discreetly to a boy who grins with mischief, offering you a tiny taste. Sweet fruit fills your mouth, berries preserved with a little honey. It's a luxury, rare and fleeting, and you savor it, imagining that sweetness will linger far longer than it actually will. Across the way, someone offers spiced wine, its aroma exotic and heady. You decline. Alcohol, even lightly fermented, can knock a child's balance, and you're expected to help with chores later. Still, the scent alone makes the air feel richer, more celebratory. The Lord or his steward might make an appearance. A brief nod here, a curt smile there, and the villagers stiffen, remembering that even in festivity, hierarchy cannot be ignored. Taxes, tithes, and obligations lurk beneath the laughter. The balance between fear and celebration is delicate. One wrong word, one lazy step, and the mood can shift. You watch, fascinated, as the line between devotion, duty, and delight blurs, the church's influence threading through every interaction. Nearby, a group of musicians plays rudimentary instruments, drums, flutes, and a stringed instrument that seems improvised from a lute. Their tune is lively, prompting couples to dance in circles. You watch the spins and steps, the laughter, the occasional stumble that draws cheers rather than scorn. Even laborers, sun-baked and calloused, loosened shoulders sway to the rhythm, momentarily free from the backbreaking work of the fields. This, you think, is the village alive at its fullest, the soul visible in motion and sound. A quirky tidbit catches your attention. Sometimes villagers tossed coins into the churchyard fountain or a central dish during festivals, hoping for blessings on crops, livestock, or even their love lives. Superstition mingled seamlessly with devotion. You note it quietly, thinking that faith here is as practical as it is spiritual. Every gesture carries weight, from prayers whispered to coins dropped to songs sung and pies shared. Food flows freely, and you grab a bowl of pottage, this time thicker than usual, richer with vegetables. Perhaps even a scrap of meat, if luck allows. The taste is comforting and celebratory, more than mere sustenance. You dip a chunk of bread in, chew slowly, letting flavors linger. Around you, the village hums with contentment, children squealing in joy, elders nodding and murmuring blessings. The smell of roasting meat, sweet pies, and fresh bread mixes with the aroma of the church's incense, creating a sensory overlay that will linger long after the feast ends. Debates flare in quiet corners of the village. Whose pie is better? Whose ale is stronger? Who has the finest cloak? These conversations, small and seemingly trivial, shape social bonds as much as any official announcement. You notice subtle gestures, a tilt of the head, a smile, a winked tokens of alliances, flirtations, and rivalries that have nothing to do with food but everything to do with human connection. By mid-afternoon, the festivities reach a crescendo. Children tire, the elders begin to retreat to benches or shade, and the lingering workers start to shuffle home. Music slows, the fire under the pig dies down, and the marketplace, once vibrant, begins to settle. You linger a moment, savoring the taste of sweet pies still clinging to your lips, the echoes of laughter and the warmth of community pressing around you. Finally, you trudge home with your portion of leftovers, carrying a small bag of vegetables, a loaf of bread, and, if fortune smiled, a piece of cheese. Your feet are muddy, your clothes smudged with flour and soot, or your heart feels a little lighter, buoyed by celebration, by the rare suspension of daily toil. The bells toll once more, signaling evening prayers, reminding you that even in festivity, faith continues to govern the rhythms of life. As the sun dips lower, the shadows stretch across the fields. You return to your hut, place the food on the table, and pause, taking in the scent of smoke, the warm glow of embers, the faint buzz of conversation drifting in from neighboring homes. Feast day ends not with fireworks, but with contented sighs, scraped plates, and the slow, steady acknowledgement that tomorrow work resumes. Still, for a few hours, the village lived differently, joyful, indulgent, connected. And as you sit, tasting your slightly better than usual pottage, you realize something essential. The church, the Lord, the fields. The market saw these forces shape your world. But it is the fleeting moments of shared laughter, of communal indulgence, that truly reveal the soul of the medieval village. Between fasting and feasting, prayer and play, the villagers find the space to breathe, to live, and to connect. Today, in the smell of roasting meat and the rhythm of music, you glimpse that soul fully, and you carry it with you, tucked inside like a secret treasure, back to the smoky warmth of your hut. By mid-morning, the village hums with activity. But now your attention shifts from fields and festivals to the quiet, intricate world of the craftsmen. Their workshops sit at the edges of lanes, tucked between huts, offering glimpses of sparks, sawdust, and the faint tang of metal. You trudge over, boots squelching in mud, and pause to watch. The blacksmith's forge glows like a captured sun, the air shimmering with heat and the scent of burning coal. Every hammer strike sends a pulse through your chest, a rhythm both brutal and mesmerizing. The blacksmith is a towering figure, his leather apron streaked with sweat and soot. Sparks fly like fireflies as he hammers iron into shape, tools arranged with precision that only years of repetition can grant. You notice the small details, the way he turns his wrist just so, the rhythm he keeps between blows, the careful timing that prevents the metal from cracking. This is craft, not magic, though watching it feels magical. Historians still argue whether medieval blacksmiths held social power because of their skill or simply because metal was rare and essential. Either way, you understand immediately. Without him, there are no nails, no plows, no horseshoes. The village's backbone runs through this glowing forge. Nearby, the spinner crouches beside a wheel, fibers twisting and snapping as she draws out wool. Her fingers move with an elegance your hands can barely fathom. Every thread she spins is a stitch in the village's survival, clothing the hungry, the weary, and occasionally the curious traveler who stops by to admire her skill. You remember your mother showing you once how to spin but only the simplest of knots. Watching her work is mesmerizing. The spindle turns endlessly. The wheel hums a low monotone and the wool softens under her touch. In a corner, a carpenter hammers gently, shaping planks for the next hut or repairing a wagon wheel. The smell of fresh-cut wood mixes with sawdust floating lazily in the air, tickling your nose and making your eyes water. It's mesmerizing in a sharp, earthy way. You can almost imagine yourself working here, if only your back weren't permanently bent from fields. If only your hands weren't already calloused and blistered. Still, you watch, fascinated by the variety of motion, the harmony between craft and function, each strike purposeful, each movement measured. A quirky tidbit drifts past as an apprentice whispers to another. Some blacksmiths would secretly forge charms into horseshoes or plows, believing the metal carried protective magic. A small symbol, hidden from view, might ensure fertile fields or guard against accidents. You glance at the forge, imagining tiny charms buried within iron, silent and unseen. Magic, superstition, and skill mingle seamlessly here. The villagers gather, sometimes just to watch, sometimes to trade. A young man carries grain sacks to barter for a repaired plowshare. A woman brings spun wool for mending tools. You observe the interactions carefully. There's a subtle hierarchy even here. Master craftsmen command respect, apprentices nervously follow instruction, and outsiders tread lightly. Every nod, every gesture signals social position as clearly as the church bell or the Lord's appearance. Historians still debate whether guild structures existed in every village or only in towns, but in this one, a clear order is visible. Master craftsmen teach apprentices, who in turn may train younger siblings. Skills passed down generations, not just for survival, but for social stability. You realize how fragile it all is. Lose the blacksmith, and the village slows. Lose the spinner, and warmth disappears. Lose the carpenter, and the huts crumble. Each craft carries not only practical utility, but social importance, the invisible scaffolding of the village's soul. You wander past the potter, kneading clay, shaping bowls, jars, and jugs with hands coated in soft mud. The rhythmic spin of the wheel mirrors the plow's arc in the field, the beating of the blacksmith's hammer, and even the turning of the spindle. It's a quiet harmony, less about noise and more about motion, the subtle music of labor. You pick up a small clay shard discarded near the fire, imagining what it once held: water, ale, porridge. Every artifact tells a story, even broken. Your attention is drawn back to the blacksmith as a child drops a tool in surprise, the clang echoing sharply. The smith glances, expression unreadable for a beat. Then a small smile creeps across his face. Teaching patience and respect is part of the craft as much as shaping iron. You nod to yourself. The village survives not just on muscle and grit, but on the transmission of knowledge, the invisible web of teaching and learning that ensures no skill is lost. The midday sun rises higher, and you feel the warmth on your back as you continue to observe. Sweat glistens on foreheads. Dust clings to clothes. Hands are blackened or red with effort. Yet, in the midst of toil, there is pride. Every hammered nail, every spun thread, every carved plank is a testament to human ingenuity, endurance, and necessity. Even the smallest apprentice's fumble is a step toward mastery, a promise of continuity. A humorous moment breaks the rhythm. A chicken escapes a basket and darts across the workshop, causing a minor panic. A spinning wheel tips slightly, wool tangling, while the blacksmith swats a fly. Grumbling, even the birds want a hand in my work. Laughter ripples quietly, the tension eases. Life in the workshop, like life in the fields or at the market, contains these small moments of levity, reminders that even labor is punctuated by human imperfection and amusement. You spend hours moving from one workshop to another, observing, learning, imagining. The sun arcs toward afternoon, and the craftsmen begin to wind down. Tools are cleaned, fires banked, wheels slowed. The rhythm of creation slows, giving way to the rhythm of return. Meals, chores, rest. You step out into the lane, the village bathed in warm light, the smell of smoke and wood lingering. You notice the children trying to imitate the blacksmith, hitting sticks against metal scraps, and you smile. Apprenticeship begins young. By the time you return to your hut, the village feels alive in a different way than the marketplace or the fields. Here, life is measured in sparks, spins, and sawdust. It's precise, demanding, yet deeply human. Craftsmen hold the village together, not just through tangible goods, but through skill, knowledge, and the shared understanding that their work underpins every other aspect of life. Without them, faith, food, and labor would falter. And as the evening stretches and shadows lengthen across the lanes, you carry with you the quiet lesson of the craftsman. Survival is not just about sweat in the fields or devotion in the church. It's about skill, mastery, and the subtle hum of labor that turns raw materials into sustenance, tools, and beauty. Between hammer, wheel, and spindle, the soul of the medieval village pulses steadily, a testament to human ingenuity and endurance, uncelebrated yet unbreakable. The afternoon fades into early evening, and now your attention drifts to the village's social heartbeat, the hearth and home. The rhythm here is subtler than in the fields, quieter than the marketplace, yet no less vital. You step into your hut, where the fading light slants through the small window, illuminating the smoke curling from the central fire pit. It's time for domestic life, the endless tasks that keep the family fed, clothed, and alive. You hang your muddy tunic, wipe your hands on a rag, and brace yourself for the steady pace of chores. The fire crackles, throwing a warm, flickering glow. Your mother moves deftly, tending the pottage for tonight, kneading dough for bread to bake tomorrow, repairing a tear in your father's tunic. Every gesture is precise and unhurried, yet urgent. Time is a thread, and she weaves it with care, ensuring that nothing frays. You help where you can, gathering firewood, filling the water jug from the well, sorting vegetables. These tasks are repetitive, almost ritualistic, yet in them lies the village's continuity. Children are a constant presence, their energy fracturing the monotony. Your sister darts between legs, balancing a wooden doll, while your brother chases a chicken that somehow escaped the pen. You laugh, lifting the bird gently, and remind him that tomorrow chores will be his. The balance of work and play is delicate, every movement choreographed by necessity and habit. Historians still argue whether peasant children truly played, or if all activity was preparation for labor. You know better. Even in mischief, lessons are learned, muscles strengthened, and bonds formed. You return to the fire and stir the pottage, thickened with the day's vegetables and a few scraps of salted meat scavenged from the market. The aroma fills the hut, mingling with the earthy scent of straw and smoke. Hunger sharpens your senses. You dip a wooden spoon into the bubbling pot, tasting. Bitter, sweet, savory, all at once. It's never exquisite, never delicate, but it sustains. It reminds you that survival is made in small, repeated acts, not grand gestures. Nearby, your mother hums a tune, a gentle refrain that has no words but carries memory. You recognize it from festivals, from the church, from fleeting moments of calm after long days in the fields. Music threads through domestic life just as much as work. It softens tasks, stitches together hours, and reminds you of continuity. Even in the quietest corner of the hut, the village's soul manifests through these small rituals. A quirky tidbit. Some villagers keep small charms near the hearth, believing they ward off fire or misfortune. Tiny figures carved from wood, bits of herbs, or even coins tucked beneath stones are passed down through generations. You glance at one of these trinkets, a miniature iron bell, wondering if it actually works. Whether superstition or protection, it's a reminder that home is not just a shelter, but a sacred space. Blending faith, practicality, and ritual. The meal begins. You sit cross-legged on the rushes, wooden bowl in hand. Each mouthful is careful, deliberate, a pause between breaths. Conversations unfold quietly. Your father recounts the day's labors in the field, comparing his plowshare to the neighbor's. Your mother instructs your siblings in the finer points of kneading dough. Your little sister recounts a story about a runaway chicken, exaggerating its heroics for maximum amusement. Even within this small space, the village's social web is alive and intricate, spun from stories, corrections, laughter, and advice. You note how the evening meal differs from breakfast or midday pottage. There is a rhythm of reflection, a subtle slowing that allows observation. Your hands, caked in mud and calluses, rest for a moment. Your mind, usually focused on toil, drifts to the wider village. The neighbors, the market, the blacksmith's forge you passed this morning. Every element intertwines, reminding you that life is a continuous thread, connecting hut to field, hearth to church. Outside, the fading light softens the landscape. Shadows stretch across the village lanes, and you hear distant voices calling livestock home. The smell of wood smoke from chimneys mingles with the sweet tang of late-blooming herbs. You glimpse the church spire rising above the rooftops, reminding you that faith continues to structure daily life, even in the private spaces of home. Bell tolls in the distance mark time, rhythmically pacing your evening. Historians still debate the exact division of labor within medieval households, particularly the role of women versus men, children versus adults. What you observe is balance through necessity. Everyone contributes, everyone learns, everyone survives. The domestic sphere, though quiet and often overlooked, is as crucial to village life as the fields, the market, or the church. The skills honed here, cooking, mending, childcare, are threads in the social fabric. Each act a stitch that holds the village together. After supper, your family settles into routine tasks. Plates are rinsed, utensils scraped, fire stoked for warmth, and scraps collected for the pigs. The children are guided towards small lessons: spinning wool, sorting herbs, tending small garden patches. You participate in both work and teaching, understanding that knowledge transmission is as vital as survival itself. Without these quiet lessons, the village risks losing more than skills. It risks losing its soul. As the night deepens, the hut grows quieter. The fire diminishes to embers, shadows flicker and stretch, and the rhythmic breathing of family members becomes a comforting counterpoint to the crackling of the hearth. You pause to observe, reflecting on the day, from the market bustle to the blacksmith's forge. From the field's endless demands to the calm of domestic chores, the village exists as a network of interdependent acts. Each small task, however mundane, carries weight, contributing to survival, cohesion, and identity. A soft thought enters your mind. Even in labor and fatigue, there is beauty. The warmth of the fire, the aroma of pottage, the laughter of children, the stories shared, these are the threads that connect one day to the next. This quiet domestic world may be less spectacular than feast day or market day, but it is equally vital. The village's soul lives here, in the everyday acts of care, patience, and shared responsibility. Finally, as the household settles, you stretch on the rushes, listening to the muted night outside. Crickets chirp, the wind rustles the trees, and a distant bell tolls a solemn note. You close your eyes briefly, letting the rhythm of hearth and home carry you toward rest. The day's labors, the sensory overload of market and field, the lessons from craftsmen all fold into a single pulse, a deep, steady heartbeat that will carry you forward into tomorrow. The domestic sphere is quiet, but never empty. Each fire tended, each meal prepared, each thread spun, and each child guided is a thread in the tapestry of life. Between sweat, smoke, and stories, the village sustains itself, quietly resilient, alive in ways both subtle and profound. And as you drift toward sleep on the straw, the village's pulse becomes your own, steady, enduring, and intimate, a testament to the strength of human connection and routine. The night creeps slowly across the village, but you don't retreat fully into rest just yet. Evening in a medieval settlement has its own peculiar rhythm, filled with whispers, rituals, and the low hum of human presence. The day may belong to the Lord, the priest, and the relentless soil, but the night, the night belongs to the villagers themselves. You step outside your hut, the rushes beneath your feet still clinging faintly to the scent of smoke and stew. The air is cooler now, sharper, laced with the smell of damp earth and faint manure from the livestock pens. A thin mist creeps low along the ground, turning familiar paths into pale ribbons in the moonlight. The church spire cuts a dark silhouette against the stars, silent now, its bells at rest until dawn. The lanes that were noisy and busy by day are hushed, punctuated only by the occasional bark of a dog or the creak of a shutter. The village transforms at night. Shadows lengthen, sounds sharpen. A wooden door slams in the distance, startling you, but it's only someone securing their animals. You see flickering lights from other huts, families lingering around hearths, finishing small tasks before sleep. Some women spin wool in the dim glow, their hands refusing to be idle. Men mend tools, knives, or harnesses, ensuring tomorrow's labor won't falter. But night is not only for work, it is also for stories. You wander toward your neighbor's hut, drawn by the low murmur of voices. Inside, elders gather, recounting tales of saints, heroes, and sometimes darker thing spirits that roam fields, witches who curse cows, or beasts that lurk in forests. You sit cross-legged, firelight warming your face, and let the rhythm of their voices sink into you. One old man claims he once saw a spectral knight galloping across the moor on a misty night. Another swears a wandering peddler carried a cursed charm that sickened every cow he touched. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants truly believed in such creatures or whether these stories were simply entertainment on long, dark evenings. Either way, you listen, wide-eyed heart thumping at every dramatic pause. The night sky pulls your attention outside again. Stars scatter in dazzling numbers, unpolluted by lamps or city smoke. The Milky Way stretches like spilled flour across the heavens. You tilt your head back, half dizzy at the immensity. Some villagers believe the stars guide the souls of the dead. Others whisper they are candles lit by angels. You, staring until your neck aches, think only of their beauty, so unreachable yet constant. A quirky tidbit whispers its way into your memory. Villagers sometimes interpreted the howling of dogs at night as omens. A single bark might be dismissed, but a chorus was a sure sign of death or disaster. Tonight, you hear a few hounds baying in the distance, their cries echoing. You shiver involuntarily, glancing at your hut, suddenly grateful for the thick door and your family's nearness. Not all night noises are ominous, though. A neighbor plucks a stringed instrument, its simple tune floating over the stillness. A woman hums while cradling a baby. Somewhere, the rhythmic pounding of a millstone continues into the night. The miller squeezing every bit of energy from the water wheel. Even darkness cannot completely silence the village. It merely changes the tempo. As the evening deepens, you return to your own hearth. Your father stretches out on the straw, muttering about the weather and tomorrow's work. Your mother arranges the younger children, layering blankets of wool and rush mats to ward off the chill. You arrange yourself in your place, the air heavy with the mingling sense of sweat, smoke, and earth. Privacy is non-existent here. Bodies lie shoulder to shoulder, breath mingling, limbs tangled. Yet, in this closeness lies comfort. You hear the steady rhythm of breathing, a communal lullaby. But sleep does not come instantly. You lie awake, staring into the dim glow of embers, thoughts drifting. You replay the day. The blacksmith's sparks, the marketplace's clamor, the church's chants, the festival's laughter. Each memory lingers like a footprint in the soil of your mind. You imagine tomorrow already the fields, the sweat, the toll of bells, the endless rhythm repeating. A sigh escapes you, part weariness, part resignation. Night holds its own dangers. Bandits or raiders could creep into the outskirts, though most nights pass peacefully. Wolves, too, are whispered threats. You strain your ears for unusual sounds. A sudden crack, just a branch in the wind. A faint rustle only. A neighbor returning late. Fear is constant, but so is resilience. You nestle deeper into the straw, convincing yourself the hut walls are fortress enough. Your thoughts drift again, this time toward the church spire silhouetted against the stars. Faith never sleeps. Even now, the presence of God is imagined in every corner of the village, every flicker of fire, every whispered prayer before bed. You murmur one yourself, simple and unadorned, for protection through the night, for strength tomorrow, for health of family and livestock. The words comfort you, though you suspect they are as much ritual as belief. The quiet deepens further. The miller's grinding halts, the dogs grow silent, even the wind rests. Only the soft crackle of your fire and the breathing of your family remain. It is in this profound stillness that you feel the weight of the day fully settle. Every ache in your muscles throbs louder. Every thought grows slower. Sleep presses like a heavy hand, urging surrender. Historians still debate whether peasants slept into shifts first sleep and second sleep, waking at midnight for prayer. Small chores or even quiet conversation before dozing again. Perhaps tonight you will experience it yourself. Already, you sense that your body wants rest, but your mind refuses complete surrender. You turn, adjust the straw, and drift halfway between waking and dreaming. And dreams, of course, belong to the village too. Some say dreams are omens, whispers from saints or devils. You remember your mother once describing a vision of a great tree sprouting gold leaves, which she took as a sign of good harvest. Whether omen or nonsense, you don't care. For now, the dream offers escape from toil. When you stir awake briefly in the night, the hut is hushed. The embers glow faintly. Your father snores. Your sister murmurs in her sleep. You roll over, sighing, and settle again. Outside, the village lies in silence under its blanket of stars. Every hut like a tiny ember glowing faintly in the vast dark. Between church and field, between sweat and prayer, the medieval village sleeps, and you, nestled among kin, sleep with it. Morning returns before you are ready. Your eyes open to the faint gray light seeping through the gaps in the wooden walls. The fire has long since gone cold, leaving only ashes and the faint smell of char. Your body aches in the familiar way, every joint stiff from yesterday's labor, but there is no pause allowed. The rhythm of the medieval village never stops, and you rise whether your soul feels like it or not. The first sound you hear is the rooster's crow, sharp and insistent, echoing across the huts. It's joined by the shuffle of neighbors already at work, the thump of buckets, the creak of wooden doors. A donkey brays, chickens scatter in the dirt, and before the sun fully climbs, the village is alive again. The night's dreams, fears, and whispered stories dissolve into the blunt reality of survival. You step outside, rubbing your eyes, and the cool dew weights your bare feet. The fields stretch outward, glistening in the pale morning light. The church looms steady, its bells silent for now, but ready to call you at any moment. Between the sacred and the soil, you stand once again, a tiny figure in a cycle that feels eternal. Breakfast is meager stale bread, softened with a bit of ale or water, maybe a smear of butter if you're lucky. It's not about pleasure. It's about fuel. You chew slowly, letting the rough crumbs scrape your tongue, washing it down with the warm temps of yesterday's brew. A joke passes through your mind that if coffee had been discovered here, medieval peasants might have conquered the world just from the caffeine kick alone. But instead, ale it is, even for children, since water is often untrustworthy. The day's work begins again. The plow waits, the oxen groan, and the soil stretches endlessly ahead. Your hands blistered yesterday, and they'll blister again today. Still, you push forward. The earth is stubborn, heavy, and unyielding. But it is also life. Without it, the village starves. Every step you take in the furrow, every drop of sweat that slides down your back is part of the eternal bargain struck between field and stomach. Yet the field is not the only pull on you. The church calls, sometimes with bells, sometimes with expectation. You kneel again in the pews, the air thick with incense, and chant. The priest reminds you that toil is holy, that your suffering mirrors Christ's, that salvation is earned through endurance. And though you sigh, though your knees ache on the stone floor, you cling to the thought that all of this, every blister, every hunger pang might mean something beyond this dirt-bound life. But between these poles of labor and devotion, something else lives. The soul of the village itself. It breathes in the gossip traded by women at the well. It chuckles in the laughter of children chasing each other through the mud. It stirs in the festivals when everyone dances and drinks, forgetting hunger for one night. It steadies in the quiet moments at night when you lie listening to your family breathe. The soul is not only in the church's stones or the fields, furrows, is in the weave of all of it. A tapestry made of mud, faith, fear, and joy. A quirky truth drifts into your thoughts. Medieval people often believed fairies could steal away healthy children and leave changelings in their place. Parents sometimes kept charms or hung iron near the cradle to ward them off. You glance at the babies in the village and imagine mother's quiet prayers, the way superstition and desperation intertwine. Historians still argue whether such fears reflected literal belief or a cultural way of explaining the tragedies of infant illness. Either way, the soul of the village held space for both faith and folklore, side by side. You keep working, but the hours blur. The sun climbs high, baking your neck, drying the soil into hard clumps. Sweat stings your eyes. Hunger gnaws again. A piece of cheese, a handful of beans, maybe a pear if it's the right season. This is your midday meal. It is enough to carry you through, if not enough to fill you. And always, the work resumes. But not every day is the same. Some days, the soul of the village swells with celebration saints' feasts, weddings, the fairs where distant traders arrive with strange goods and stranger stories. On those days, you taste spiced cakes or honeyed wine, hear music that rattles your bones, see colors brighter than any in your hut. For a brief moment, life feels less like survival and more like living. And then, of course, the fields still wait. Evenings, too, carry their weight. You finish your toil, stumble home, and sit again by the hearth. Smoke fills your lungs, your belly groans for something more, but your heart swells when laughter fills the hut. You listen to stories, some true, some wildly not, and let them blur the edges of your exhaustion. You think about the saints, about demons, about omens in the stars. You wonder what tomorrow brings. And then night falls, and with it comes silence again. The hut creaks, the embers glow, and sleep presses heavy. Some nights bring dreams, some bring only blackness. Some nights you wake halfway, whispering prayers in the darkness, but always the cycle resets. Church and field, field and church, breath and sweat, prayer and laughter. The soul of the medieval village is not grand, not glorious. It is ordinary, muddy, hungry, stubborn. Yet it is also resilient, communal, and enduring. You may feel trapped in the endless rhythm, but you also sense the strange comfort in its constancy. You belong here, even if you sometimes long for more. As you drift into another night, the church bells wait to wake you, the soil waits to test you, and the people around you wait to laugh, cry, and work alongside you. Between the church and the field, the medieval village holds you, and within that embrace, the soul of the place continues, beating like a heart that never fully rests.